You're telling me a 12-year-old janitor's son just solved what my entire team of PhDs couldn't? The CEO's voice echoed through the boardroom as security footage revealed something that would change everything. What happens when a child sees what brilliant minds miss? When a young black boy's chalk marks on a whiteboard threaten to expose the prejudices of a billion-dollar company? This is the story of Marcus Williams, whose father cleaned offices at night, and whose mind saw patterns where others saw chaos. One late evening, one impossible problem, and one shocking solution that would force a powerful CEO to make a decision that stunned everyone. If you want to witness how genius can emerge from the most unexpected places, make sure to subscribe to this channel and watch till the end. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The halls of Teknova Industries gleamed under the fluorescent lights as Robert Williams pushed his cleaning cart through the executive floor. It was 9 p.m., and most employees had long since departed, leaving behind only the hum of computers and the whisper of the air conditioning. Robert had been the night janitor here for 8 years, invisible to most who worked in these prestigious offices during daylight hours. "Dad, are you sure it's okay that I'm here?" Marcus Williams, 12 years old with curious eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, walked beside his father, his worn backpack slung over one shoulder. "The babysitter canceled last minute, son. Mrs. Chen knows you're here. Just stay close and don't touch anything," Robert replied, his voice gentle but firm. He'd called ahead to Sarah Chen, the night security guard who'd become something of a friend over the years. They'd passed through security 20 minutes earlier, Sarah raising an eyebrow but ultimately waving them through. "Just this once, Robert. Keep him in sight. You know how the executives get about unauthorized personnel." Marcus had nodded solemnly, understanding even at his age that his presence here was an exception, a bend in rules that weren't meant to bend. He'd seen how people looked at his father sometimes, the man who emptied their trash and cleaned their messes, necessary but unnoticed. As they reached the main conference room, Robert checked his watch. "I need to clean this room first. Big meeting today, apparently. You can sit in the corner and do your homework." Marcus entered the room and immediately stopped. The massive whiteboard that dominated the far wall was covered in equations, numbers and symbols dancing across the surface in multiple colors. His eyes widened as he recognized mathematical patterns, though these were far more complex than anything in his 7th grade textbook. "Dad, what is all this?" Robert glanced at the board while preparing his cleaning supplies. "Company stuff. Above my pay grade, Marcus. Probably some computer thing they're working on." But Marcus couldn't look away. The equations seemed to pulse with life, each line connected to the next in an intricate web. He'd always been good with numbers, his teachers called him gifted, though he tried not to let it show too much. Being too smart had its own problems in school. As Robert began cleaning the windows, Marcus pulled out his math homework, but his eyes kept drifting to the whiteboard. There was something there, something that tickled the back of his mind. A pattern trying to emerge from the chaos. "Teknova Industries, revolutionizing data processing," read a banner on the wall. Marcus knew the company was important. His father's steady job here had kept their small apartment and put food on the table since his mother passed away 3 years ago. He tried to focus on his homework, really tried, but the equations called to him. Without conscious thought, he found himself standing, walking closer to the board. The numbers seemed to rearrange themselves in his mind, forming new connections. "Marcus, what did I say about touching?" "I'm not touching, Dad. Just looking." His voice was distant, distracted. In his mind, pieces were falling into place like a puzzle he didn't know he'd been solving. Robert sighed, returning to his work. He'd learned to pick his battles with Marcus, and the boy standing and staring wasn't hurting anything. In 30 minutes, they'd move to the next floor, and this would all be forgotten. But Marcus wouldn't forget. Couldn't forget. Because in those equations, in that complex web of mathematics that had stumped some of the brightest minds in tech, a 12-year-old boy was beginning to see something everyone else had missed. The solution was there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for eyes unclouded by assumptions and expectations to find it. And Marcus Williams, son of a janitor, standing in a room he technically shouldn't even be in, was about to change everything. 14 hours earlier, the same conference room had been filled with tension thick enough to cut. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Technova's lead mathematician, stood before the whiteboard, her usually steady hand trembling slightly as she wrote out another equation. The bottleneck is here, she said, pointing to a particularly complex section of the algorithm. Every solution we've tried either compromises processing speed or data integrity. We can't have both. Derek Morrison, VP of Operations, slammed his hand on the table. This is unacceptable. We have the best minds in the industry, and you're telling me we can't solve a simple optimization problem? With all due respect, Mr. Morrison, this is far from simple, Dr. Vasquez replied, her accent becoming more pronounced under stress. The theoretical framework alone, I don't want to hear about theoretical frameworks. Derek interrupted, his face flushing red. I want solutions. Do you have any idea what's at stake here? Janice Thompson, the CEO, raised a hand for silence. At 51, she commanded the room with quiet authority, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her no-nonsense demeanor. Elena, please continue your explanation. Dr. Vasquez nodded gratefully. The Matsumoto contract requires us to process data at speeds that are, frankly, at the edge of what's theoretically possible. Their satellite network generates 10 terabytes per second. Our current algorithm can handle 7.3 on a good day. Which means we lose the contract, said James Peterson from the board, his face grave on the video screen. That's $100 million walking out the door. Not to mention our reputation, added Linda Roberts, frantically taking notes. If word gets out that Technova couldn't deliver. Janice stood, walking to the whiteboard. She studied the equations with the intensity that had built her company from a startup to a tech giant. How long have we been working on this? 6 weeks, Dr. Vasquez admitted. My entire team has been pulling 18-hour days. We've consulted with professors from MIT, Stanford, even brought in specialists from NASA's data processing division. And they all hit the same wall we did. The mathematical constraints seem absolute. To process at that speed while maintaining data integrity would require a completely different approach to the fundamental algorithm. Derek snorted. Then find a different approach. That's what we pay you for. Derek. Janice's voice carried a warning. She turned back to Dr. Vasquez. What about the quantum computing angle? Still 5 years away from practical application. The Matsumoto contract needs a solution now. The room fell silent. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled below them, oblivious to the crisis unfolding in the Technova boardroom. $100 million contract. 500 jobs. The company's future balanced on a mathematical knife's edge. I want everyone on this, Janice finally said. Cancel all other projects. Bring in any consultant who might have ideas. I don't care if they're from competitors, pay whatever it takes. Ma'am, Linda ventured, the Matsumoto deadline. 48 hours. Janice's jaw tightened. If we can't show them a working solution in 48 hours, they walk. Dr. Vasquez felt her stomach drop. 2 days to solve what 6 weeks couldn't crack. I'll have my team work through the night. We all will, Janice said. She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. This is Technova's Apollo 13 moment. Failure is not an option. As the meeting broke up, Derek cornered Dr. Vasquez. This is your fault, he hissed. You assured us your team could handle the Matsumoto requirements. The initial parameters were different. Excuses. He jabbed a finger at the equations. If you can't solve this, I'll find someone who can. Plenty of hungry young graduates would kill for your position. Dr. Vasquez bit back her response. She'd been solving complex mathematical problems since Derek was still learning basic algebra, but corporate politics demanded she stay silent. Instead, she turned back to the whiteboard, adding another line to the growing maze of calculations. 48 hours, she whispered to herself. In 48 hours, everything would change. She just had no idea that the change would come from the last source anyone would expect, a 12-year-old boy whose father would clean this very room in just a few hours. The equations stared back at her, stubborn and unforgiving, holding their secrets close. Somewhere in that mathematical labyrinth was the key to saving Technova. She just had to find it. If only she knew that the key would walk through the door that night, carrying a 7th-grade math textbook and wearing hand-me-down sneakers, seeing the world through eyes that hadn't yet learned what was supposed to be impossible. Marcus sat cross-legged on the carpet, his homework forgotten as his eyes traced the equations sprawling across the whiteboard. His father had moved on to vacuum the adjacent offices, the distant hum of the machine providing a white noise backdrop to Marcus's concentration. The numbers seemed to dance before him, forming patterns that shifted and realigned in his mind. It was like the puzzles in his favorite mobile game, where you had to find the hidden path through seeming chaos. Except this was real, and far more complex than anything he'd encountered before. He pulled out a notebook and began sketching, not the equations themselves. His father had been clear about not touching anything, but the patterns he saw within them. His pencil moved almost unconsciously, translating the mathematical relationships into visual representations. Data flow, he murmured, reading one of the labels. He knew about data from his computer class, how information moved through systems like water through pipes. But according to these equations, the pipes were too small for the amount of water trying to flow through. His mind wandered to last summer when they'd visited his uncle in Atlanta. The old house had terrible water pressure because the pipes couldn't handle the flow. His uncle had fixed it by. Marcus's pencil stopped moving. Parallel processing, he whispered. His uncle hadn't replaced the pipes with bigger ones, he'd added more pipes, dividing the flow. But looking at the equations, the Technova team had already tried that approach. The mathematical proof was right there, showing why it failed. Marcus stood, drawn to the board like a magnet. He still didn't touch it, but now he was close enough to see the subtle notations, the frustrated erasures, the places where different colored markers showed different attempts at the same problem. They were all trying to push the data through faster. But what if speed wasn't the only answer? What if? His mind raced back to music class last month. Mrs. Johnson had taught them about harmonics, how certain frequencies could amplify each other when perfectly aligned. The same principle applied to waves in physics, which was really just applied mathematics, which was. Oh, Marcus breathed. The solution bloomed in his mind like a flower opening to sunlight. It wasn't about pushing the data through faster or using more pathways. It was about alignment, about finding the harmonic frequency of the data itself. He looked around the empty conference room. His father was still vacuuming next door. The smart thing would be to sit back down, finish his homework, pretend he'd never seen any of this. That's what his father would want, what the world expected from a janitor's son who didn't belong in these hallowed halls of corporate power. But the solution was so clear now, so obvious that he couldn't understand how all these brilliant adults had missed it. They were so focused on force and speed that they'd overlooked elegance and harmony. Marcus found himself at the supply cabinet, hands shaking as he pulled out a green dry erase marker. His father would be upset, but maybe if he could just show them. He moved to a clear section of the whiteboard and began to write. The equations flowed from his mind through his hand, each line building on the last. He incorporated elements from the existing work but transformed them, rotating the entire approach by 90 degrees. Instead of fighting the data flow, his solution surfed it, using the natural resonance patterns to achieve speeds that the original approach could never reach. It was like the difference between swimming upstream and riding the current. Time lost meaning as he worked. The marker squeaked against the board, leaving green trails of mathematical logic. He had to stand on his tiptoes to reach the higher portions, his young body stretching to match the reach of his mind. Somewhere in the back of his consciousness, he heard his father's voice calling his name, but he couldn't stop now. He was so close, the final pieces clicking into place like the last notes of a symphony. "Marcus! What are you doing?" Robert's voice cut through his concentration, sharp with alarm and disappointment. Marcus turned, marker still in hand, his eyes bright with the fever of discovery. "Dad, I solved it. I solved their problem." Robert stared at the board, at the green equations intertwining with the multicolored work of Technova's best minds. To him, it might as well have been hieroglyphics. But he recognized the look on his son's face, the same expression Marcus had worn when he'd figured out how to fix their neighbor's computer or when he'd won the district math competition without breaking a sweat. "Marcus, you can't, we need to erase this. Now." "But Dad, now, Marcus." Robert's voice was firm but tinged with fear. "Before anyone sees." But it was too late for that. The solution was already there, waiting on the board like a gift wrapped in green marker. In a few hours, the morning shift would arrive, and everything would change. Marcus reluctantly helped his father find the eraser, but as Robert wiped away his son's work, Marcus was already redoing it on a different section, this time in blue marker. "Marcus, stop. Dad, they need this. It's important. That contract they're talking about, I heard you mention people might lose their jobs if they don't get it." Robert paused, eraser in hand. His son had always been too smart, too aware, carrying burdens no 12-year-old should bear. "That's not our concern, son. But I can help." The words hung in the air between them, a bridge between two worlds that rarely touched. Robert looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw not just his baby boy but a young man with a gift that demanded to be shared. "5 minutes," he said finally. "Then we clean it all up and never speak of this again." Marcus nodded and returned to the board, his movements now urgent and precise. In 5 minutes, he laid out a solution that had eluded some of the finest minds in technology. And when he finally stepped back, both father and son stared at the elegant mathematical proof that would save a $100 million contract. "We should go," Robert said quietly. They left the conference room exactly as they'd found it, except for one crucial difference. On the whiteboard, intertwined with the original work, Marcus's solution waited patiently for discovery, a secret gift from the night shift to the day. As they moved to the next floor, Marcus asked, "Do you think they'll use it?" Robert squeezed his son's shoulder. "I don't know, Marcus. I just hope they never find out who wrote it." But secrets, like solutions, have a way of revealing themselves. And in the morning, when the sun streamed through those tall windows and illuminated Marcus's green and blue equations, Technova Industries would face questions that went far beyond mathematics. Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived at Technova at 5:47 a.m., her third cup of coffee already working its way through her system. She'd managed 3 hours of fitful sleep, her dreams filled with cascading numbers and impossible deadlines. The Matsumoto meeting was in 30 hours, and they had nothing. She keyed into the conference room, flipping on the lights while mentally preparing for another day of mathematical warfare. Then she stopped, coffee cup halfway to her lips. The whiteboard was different. Green and blue equations wound through her team's work like ivy through a garden. At first, she thought someone from the night shift had vandalized their work, but as her eyes traced the new additions, her scientific mind kicked into gear. "Dios mío," she breathed, setting down her coffee with shaking hands. The new equations weren't random. They were. She stepped closer, following the logical flow. Whoever had written this had taken their failed approach and transformed it entirely. Where they'd been using brute force, this solution used something akin to mathematical judo, redirecting the data flow rather than constraining it. She pulled out her phone and began taking pictures, her hands trembling with excitement. Then she grabbed a calculator and began checking the math. Each calculation confirmed what her instincts had already told her: this could work. Elena? You're here early. Derek Morrison's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from surprise to suspicion as he saw the board. What's all this? I don't know. Someone added to our work overnight. Derek's face darkened. Someone? Who has access to this floor after hours? He stalked to the board, scanning the new equations with the eye of someone who understood profit margins better than mathematics. Is this some kind of joke? If it is, it's a brilliant one, Elena said, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. This approach could actually work, Derek. Look at the flow dynamics here. I don't care about flow dynamics. Derek snapped. I care about security breaches. Someone accessed our proprietary information. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling security. We need to review the footage immediately. Within 20 minutes, the conference room was crowded. Janice Thompson stood before the board, her expression unreadable as Elena explained the midnight additions. Other team members had been called in, each adding their verification that the new solution showed genuine promise. The math is solid, Dr. Park from the Quantum Division confirmed. Honestly, it's elegant in a way that makes our approach look like we were trying to perform surgery with a sledgehammer. But who wrote it? Derek demanded. That's the real question. Corporate espionage? A competitor trying to make us look foolish? Sarah Chen from security entered with a laptop. I have the footage from last night. Only one unauthorized person was in this room. She turned the laptop toward the group and hit play. The black and white footage showed Robert Williams entering with his cleaning cart, followed by a young boy with a backpack. That's the janitor, Linda Roberts said, recognizing him. Robert something. Williams, Janice supplied, her eyes fixed on the screen. He's been with us 8 years. They watched as Robert began cleaning while the boy sat in the corner. Then the boy stood, approached the board, and began to write. Is that child solving our algorithm? Derek's voice dripped with disbelief and growing anger. The room fell silent as they watched Marcus work, his young form stretching to reach higher portions of the board, his movements becoming more confident with each equation. Back it up, Janice ordered. I want to see that again. They rewatched Marcus's process, saw him study the original equations, saw the moment of revelation cross his face, watched him create a solution that had eluded them all. How old is that boy? Someone whispered. According to our records, Robert Williams has a 12-year-old son named Marcus, Sarah provided. 12. Derek's face was turning red. You're telling me a 12-year-old solved what our entire R&D department couldn't? The math doesn't lie, Elena said softly. Age is irrelevant if the solution works. Derek whirled on her. Age is very relevant. This is a security breach of the highest order. That janitor exposed his son to proprietary information. They could sell this to our competitors. They didn't take anything, Janice pointed out. They gave us something. After accessing classified material. Derek was nearly shouting now. I want Williams fired immediately. And we need to consider legal action to ensure they don't share what they saw. Derek, Janice began. No. This is exactly the kind of breach I've been warning about. Letting these people have access to sensitive areas. These people. Dr. Vasquez interrupted, her voice dangerously quiet. Derek didn't back down. You know what I mean. We need stricter controls on who can access what. This never would have happened if what? Janice's voice cut through his tirade like ice. If we didn't employ janitors. If we only let certain kinds of people clean our offices. The room tension ratcheted up another notch. Everyone knew Derek's views on the company's diversity initiatives, barely concealed beneath a veneer of corporate speak. I want Williams and his son brought in, Janice decided. Today. To press charges? Derek asked hopefully. Janice looked at him for a long moment. To thank them. And to verify this solution actually works. Elena, run the simulations. I want to know if that boy just saved our Matsumoto contract. As the room burst into activity, Janice remained at the board, studying the equations written in a child's hand. Somewhere in the city, a janitor and his son were probably eating breakfast, unaware that their secret midnight gift was about to change everything. The solution was elegant, she had to admit. But the real question wasn't whether it would work, Elena's excited chatter suggested it would. The real question was what to do about the 12-year-old genius who'd found it, and the corporate culture that had almost missed it entirely. She thought about all the times she'd walked past Robert Williams in the halls, seeing the uniform but not the man, never imagining he was raising a child who could see what her best minds couldn't. Ma'am. Linda appeared at her elbow. Should I arrange for legal to be present when the Williams family arrives? Janice's jaw tightened. Yes. But not for the reason Derek thinks. We're going to need contracts drawn up. Contracts? If that boy is half as gifted as this suggests, Technova needs to ensure he has every opportunity to develop that gift. Full scholarship, internship program, whatever it takes. Linda made notes, but looked uncertain. Derek won't like that. Janice turned from the board, her decision made. Then Derek can find another company to work for. Technova is about to learn what happens when genius comes from unexpected places. And we're going to make sure we never miss it again. Derek wasn't finished. His face contorted with rage and disbelief as he pointed an accusing finger at Marcus. This is a setup. There's no way a 12-year-old janitor's kid solved what my entire team couldn't. He must have stolen it. Industrial espionage. Derek, Janice warned, but he barreled on. Check his backpack. Check his phone. He probably photographed our work and sent it to competitors. That's the only explanation. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. I don't even have a phone. Dad says we can't afford. Convenient. Derek sneered. Then how do you explain knowing advanced mathematics that PhD candidates struggle with? Because I read, Marcus shot back. Because I watch YouTube videos. Because I solve puzzles for fun. Because being poor doesn't mean being dumb. Robert stepped forward, his quiet dignity finally breaking. Mr. Morrison, you're talking about my son. A child. He made a mistake touching your board, yes, but he tried to help. Help? Derek laughed bitterly. This is sabotage. I want security to search them both. I want their home searched. You want to humiliate a child because he showed you up, Dr. Vasquez interrupted. I've worked with you for 5 years, Derek, but this? This is beneath even you. Derek spun to face the room at large. Am I the only one who sees how impossible this is? We're talking about algorithms that took us weeks to even understand. And you want me to believe a kid who probably can't even afford a calculator? I use the library computers, Marcus said quietly. And yes, I can afford a calculator. It cost $3 at the dollar store. Someone in the back snorted with suppressed laughter. Derek's face grew even redder. This isn't funny. This is about protecting our intellectual property. From who? Janice asked. The child who gave us the solution. Or from executives who can't see past their own prejudices. Derek turned on her. Prejudices? I'm being realistic. Look at the statistics. Look at the demographics. Kids from his background don't. Finish that sentence, Janice said coldly. Please. I want everyone in this room to hear exactly what you think. Derek seemed to realize he was on dangerous ground. They don't have access to the kind of education that would make this possible. I go to public school, Marcus said. Ms. Patterson is a great teacher. She lets me borrow her old college textbooks. And I'm sure that's where you copied this from. Derek seized on this. Those textbooks. You found a similar problem and just changed the numbers. Marcus's jaw tightened. You want me to prove it? Give me another problem. Any problem. Right now. Marcus, you don't have to, his father started. No, Dad. He thinks I'm a thief and a liar. He thinks we're both criminals because you clean offices and I'm black and we're poor. Marcus faced Derek directly. So test me. Unless you're afraid a 12-year-old will embarrass you twice in one day. The challenge electrified the room. Employees pressed closer, phones discreetly recording despite company policy. This was no longer about mathematics, it was about something much deeper. Fine, Derek snarled. He grabbed a marker and began writing on a clear section of board. Solve this. It's a problem we rejected last month as too complex for current technology. The equations he wrote were deliberately obtuse, filled with unnecessary complications. Several mathematicians in the room winced at the obvious trap. Marcus studied it for a moment, then smiled. You made it harder on purpose. These 3 sections are redundant, and this part violates basic conservation principles. Just solve it if you're so smart. Marcus picked up a blue marker. First, let's clean up your mess. He began streamlining Derek's problem, removing the deliberate complications with surgical precision. There. Now it's actually solvable. He worked in silence, the only sound the squeak of marker on board. His father watched with a mixture of pride and worry. Janice Thompson observed with calculating eyes. And Derek's expression cycled through disbelief, anger, and growing fear. In 12 minutes, Marcus stepped back. Done. Though the real answer is that the problem as stated is pointless. You're trying to optimize something that doesn't need optimizing. It's like building a faster wheel when what you need is a wing. Dr. Park quickly checked the work. He's right. Both in the solution and the analysis. This proves nothing. Derek was grasping now. He could have prepared for this. Could have studied our rejected problems. How? Janice asked tiredly. How would a 12-year-old access our rejected problems? Derek, stop. You're embarrassing yourself and this company. I'm protecting this company. From them. He gestured wildly at Marcus and Robert. From people who don't belong here. The words echoed in the sudden silence. There it was, laid bare for everyone to see. Not concern for security or intellectual property, but raw, ugly prejudice. You're right, Robert said quietly, speaking for the first time in minutes. We don't belong here. Come on, Marcus. We're leaving. No, Janice said firmly. You're not going anywhere. Derek, clear out your office. You have 1 hour. What? Derek's voice cracked. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. Technova has no place for executives who judge brilliance by zip code or skin color. This is wrongful termination. I'll sue. Please do, Janice replied calmly. I'm sure the court will be fascinated by the recording of you admitting to deliberate discrimination. Derek looked around the room, seeing no support in the faces of his colleagues. His gaze landed on Marcus one last time, hatred and disbelief warring in his expression. This isn't over, he said, then stormed out, slamming the door behind him. In the silence that followed, Marcus felt his legs start to shake. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation was fading, leaving a 12-year-old boy who just wanted to go home. Are you all right? Dr. Vasquez asked gently. Marcus nodded, then shook his head, then shrugged. Is it always like this? When you're smart but don't look like what people expect? The adults exchanged glances, and in their silence, Marcus found his answer. After Derek's dramatic exit, the atmosphere in the conference room shifted. Janice Thompson gestured to chairs around the table. Please, both of you, sit. Marcus, I think you've more than proven yourself, but I'd like to understand your thought process better. Marcus and his father sat cautiously, still uncertain if they were guests or prisoners. Robert kept a protective hand on his son's shoulder. Dr. Vasquez, Janice continued, could you prepare a few problems? Not tricks or traps, just genuine mathematical challenges at various levels. I want to understand the depth of Marcus's abilities. I don't want him to be a circus act, Robert said firmly. He's a child, not a performer. You're absolutely right, Janice agreed. This isn't about entertainment. It's about understanding. Marcus potentially saved our company. I need to know if this was a one-time insight or something more. Dr. Vasquez returned with a laptop and connected it to the main screen. Marcus, I'm going to show you several problems. Take your time. There's no pressure. Just tell us what you see. The first problem appeared, a relatively simple optimization equation. That's like the traveling salesman problem, Marcus said immediately. But with weighted nodes. The trick is to recognize it's not actually about finding the shortest path, but the most efficient path given the weights. He walked to the board and sketched out a solution, explaining each step. The adults watched in fascination as he made intuitive leaps that would normally require extensive proofs. Next one, Janice said softly. The problems grew progressively more complex. Pattern recognition in datasets. Theoretical physics applications. Advanced calculus that most college students would struggle with. Each time, Marcus found elegant solutions, often approaching from angles that surprised even Dr. Vasquez. This one's interesting, Marcus said at the fifth problem. It's about quantum entanglement, right? But the math is similar to how music harmonies work. See, if you treat the particles like notes in a chord. Where did you learn about quantum entanglement? Dr. Park asked. YouTube mostly. There's this channel where a professor explains physics using animations. And I read papers on AR-14 when I can understand them, which isn't always. You read academic papers? Someone asked incredulously. Marcus shrugged. The library has free internet. Not much else to do while Dad works his second job on weekends. Robert shifted uncomfortably. The room fell silent as the reality of their situation became clear. This brilliant child was self-taught not out of luxury but necessity, finding knowledge wherever he could access it for free. One more problem, Janice said. Elena, show him the Kowalski conjecture. Gasps echoed around the room. Dr. Vasquez hesitated. Ma'am, that's an unsolved problem in mathematics. There's $1 million prize for solving it. I'm not expecting him to solve it, Janice clarified. I want to see how he approaches something truly unknown. The conjecture appeared on screen, dense with notation. Marcus studied it for several minutes, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then he began to speak, slowly at first. I can't solve this, he admitted. But I can see why it's hard. The problem is that everyone's trying to prove it directly. What if instead? He moved to the board, sketching rapidly. What if you approached it backwards? Start with what you want to prove and work towards the given conditions. He worked for 10 minutes, not solving the conjecture but laying out a framework that made several mathematicians lean forward with interest. That's actually a novel approach, Dr. Vasquez breathed. We should explore this further. I think we've seen enough, Janice said. She turned to face Marcus directly. Young man, you have a gift. A remarkable, rare gift. And Technova failed you. Ma'am. Robert spoke up, confused. We spend millions recruiting talent from top universities, and we missed genius that was literally cleaning our offices. She shook her head. Marcus, what do you want to do with your gift? Marcus glanced at his father before answering. I want to learn. I want to solve problems that matter. And He hesitated, then continued boldly, I want kids like me to know they can do this too. That being poor or black or whatever doesn't mean you can't be brilliant. Well said. Janice stood. Here's what's going to happen. First, we're implementing your solution for the Matsumoto contract. You'll be credited as the primary architect and compensated accordingly. Compensated? Robert echoed. The standard consultant fee for solving a problem of this magnitude is substantial. We'll also establish a scholarship fund for your education, Marcus. Private school if you want it, tutors, eventually college, graduate school, whatever you need. I don't want charity, Robert said stiffly. It's not charity, Janice replied. It's an investment. Your son solved $100 million problem. This is a fraction of what he saved us. She turned to address the room at large. We're also creating a new program. The Williams Initiative, named after Marcus and Robert. We'll partner with local schools to identify talented students who might not have traditional opportunities. Internships, mentorships, resources, whatever they need. You're serious? Marcus asked, eyes wide. Completely. But I have a confession, Marcus. The real test wasn't the math problems. It was seeing if you'd remain humble and kind even when confronted by someone like Derek. You passed that test even more impressively than the mathematical ones. She moved to the board where Marcus's original solution still stood. This algorithm will revolutionize how we process data. But more importantly, you've revolutionized how we think about talent and where it comes from. There's one condition, Janice added. Marcus, I'd like you to work with our team once a week. Not full-time, you're 12, you should be playing video games and hanging out with friends. But maybe Saturday mornings. We could learn a lot from how you see problems. Marcus looked at his father, who nodded slowly. Okay. But I have a condition too. Janice raised an eyebrow. Oh. My dad gets to choose his hours so he can be home when I'm home. And he gets to use the executive bathroom. The one on the regular floors is always broken. Laughter rippled through the room. Robert looked mortified, but Janice grinned. Done. In fact, Robert, how would you like to be our new facilities manager? Day shift, better pay, and you can keep an eye on your genius son when he's here. As father and son exchanged amazed looks, Janice added quietly, Technova is about to show the tech world what happens when you look for brilliance in unexpected places. And it all started with a 12-year-old who wasn't supposed to be here. But I was here, Marcus said simply. And I saw something everyone else missed. Yes, Janice agreed. You certainly did. An hour later, Janice invited Marcus and Robert to her private office on the top floor. The view of the city was breathtaking, but Marcus was more interested in the equations still dancing in his head. Can I ask you something, Marcus? Janice said, gesturing for them to sit on the leather couch. When you looked at our problem, what did you actually see? Marcus thought for a moment. Patterns. Like, you know when you're listening to music and there's that moment when all the instruments come together perfectly? That's what math feels like to me. Your team was trying to force the instruments to play louder, but what you needed was for them to play in harmony. Where did that insight come from? Everywhere, I guess. Marcus fidgeted with his backpack strap. Video games teach you about optimization. Music teaches you about patterns and frequencies. Even watching my dad work, he has this system for cleaning that's super efficient. He can clean a whole floor in half the time of the other janitors because he's figured out the optimal path. Robert looked surprised. You noticed that? I notice everything, Dad. It's kind of annoying sometimes. Janice leaned back, studying them both. Marcus, I need to be honest with you. What you did, it shouldn't be possible. I have PhDs from MIT working for me who couldn't see what you saw. Maybe that's why, Marcus suggested. They know too much about what's supposed to be impossible. I just saw a puzzle. But it's more than that, Janice pressed. You mentioned YouTube videos and library computers. Walk me through how you actually learned this level of mathematics. Marcus shrugged. It started with being bored, I guess. Dad works a lot, and I'd finished all the books in our apartment. So I started going to the library. First it was just fiction, but then I found the science section. He continued, describing how he'd discovered online courses, working through Khan Academy until it became too easy. How he'd found MIT's OpenCourseWare and started watching lectures meant for college students. How he'd learned to read academic papers by looking up every word he didn't understand. The hard part was not having anyone to ask questions, he admitted. When I got stuck, I'd have to figure it out myself or find another source. Sometimes I'd spend weeks on one concept. Weeks? Dr. Vasquez had joined them, unable to stay away. Most students give up after hours. I didn't have anything else to do, Marcus said simply. And I liked the feeling when things finally clicked. Janice exchanged glances with Dr. Vasquez. They were beginning to understand that Marcus's gift wasn't just raw intelligence, it was also persistence born from circumstances that would have defeated most people. Tell me about the harmonic approach, Janice said. That's not something you'd find in standard textbooks. Marcus brightened. Oh, that came from this documentary about whales. They were talking about how whale songs can travel thousands of miles underwater because they find these special frequencies. And I thought, if sound can do that in water, why can't data do that in networks? You applied marine biology to computer science. Is that weird? It's brilliant, Dr. Vasquez said. Cross-disciplinary thinking is the holy grail of innovation. Most people get trapped in their own fields. I don't really have a field, Marcus pointed out. I just like learning stuff. Janice stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city. Marcus, what you have is special. But I need you to understand something. The corporate world, it's not always kind to people who think differently. Derek won't be the last person to doubt you because of your age or background. I know, Marcus said quietly. I get it at school too. Some teachers think I'm cheating when I solve things too fast. Other kids think I'm showing off. How do you handle it? Dad taught me that the work speaks for itself. If the answer is right, it's right. Doesn't matter what people think about who wrote it. Robert spoke up. I've tried to prepare him for the world as it is, while hoping for the world as it should be. Well, Janice turned back to them, maybe we can make the world a little more like it should be. Starting here at Technova. She pulled out a tablet and showed them a document. This is the contract for your consulting fee, Marcus. It's substantial. We'll put it in trust for your education, but some will be available for immediate needs. Robert's eyes widened at the number. That's more than I make in 5 years. Your son saved us $100 million contract. This is a bargain, honestly. There must be a catch, Robert said warily. No catch. Just hope. Hope that Marcus will continue to work with us. Hope that his story will inspire us to look for talent in unexpected places. And hope that one day, stories like his won't be surprising at all. Marcus looked at the contract, then at his father, then back at Janice. Can I add something? What's that? I want part of the Williams initiative to include paying for babysitters. So other kids don't have to sneak into office buildings to discover they're good at math. Janice laughed, a genuine sound that filled the office. Done. Anything else? Yeah. Can we make sure the library gets better computers? Some of them are really old and slow. We'll donate a whole computer lab, Janice promised. What else? Marcus thought carefully. I want to meet the team that worked on the original problem. Not to show off, but to learn from them. They know things I don't. That's very mature of you. Also, Marcus added with a shy smile, it would be cool to have someone to talk to about math. My dad tries, but I barely passed algebra, Robert finished with a chuckle. As they prepared to leave, Janice had one more question. Marcus, when you're working on a problem, what motivates you? What keeps you going when it gets hard? Marcus considered this seriously. I think about all the kids like me who are told they can't do things. Every problem I solve is like proving them wrong. And maybe someday, another kid will see what I did and think, if he can do it, so can I. Janice felt an unexpected tightness in her throat. In all her years of corporate leadership, she'd rarely encountered such pure purpose. I think, she said softly, that's already starting to happen. As the Williams family left her office, Janice remained at the window, watching the city below. Somewhere out there were more Marcus Williamses, their brilliance hidden by circumstance and prejudice. But things were going to change. Technova was going to make sure of it. An hour later, Janice invited Marcus and Robert to her private office on the top floor. The view of the city was breathtaking, but Marcus was more interested in the equations still dancing in his head. Can I ask you something, Marcus? Janice said, gesturing for them to sit on the leather couch. When you looked at our problem, what did you actually see? Marcus thought for a moment. Patterns. Like, you know when you're listening to music and there's that moment when all the instruments come together perfectly? That's what math feels like to me. Your team was trying to force the instruments to play louder, but what you needed was for them to play in harmony. Where did that insight come from? Everywhere, I guess. Marcus fidgeted with his backpack strap. Video games teach you about optimization. Music teaches you about patterns and frequencies. Even watching my dad work, he has this system for cleaning that's super efficient. He can clean a whole floor in half the time of the other janitors because he's figured out the optimal path. Robert looked surprised. You noticed that? I notice everything, Dad. It's kind of annoying sometimes. Janice leaned back, studying them both. Marcus, I need to be honest with you. What you did, it shouldn't be possible. I have PhDs from MIT working for me who couldn't see what you saw. Maybe that's why, Marcus suggested. They know too much about what's supposed to be impossible. I just saw a puzzle. But it's more than that, Janice pressed. You mentioned YouTube videos and library computers. Walk me through how you actually learned this level of mathematics. Marcus shrugged. It started with being bored, I guess. Dad works a lot, and I'd finished all the books in our apartment. So I started going to the library. First it was just fiction, but then I found the science section. He continued, describing how he discovered online courses, working through Khan Academy until it became too easy. How he'd found MIT's OpenCourseWare and started watching lectures meant for college students. How he'd learned to read academic papers by looking up every word he didn't understand. The hard part was not having anyone to ask questions, he admitted. When I got stuck, I'd have to figure it out myself or find another source. Sometimes I'd spend weeks on one concept. Weeks? Dr. Vasquez had joined them, unable to stay away. Most students give up after hours. I didn't have anything else to do, Marcus said simply. And I liked the feeling when things finally clicked. Janice exchanged glances with Dr. Vasquez. They were beginning to understand that Marcus's gift wasn't just raw intelligence, it was also persistence born from circumstances that would have defeated most people. Tell me about the harmonic approach, Janice said. That's not something you'd find in standard textbooks. Marcus brightened. Oh, that came from this documentary about whales. They were talking about how whale songs can travel thousands of miles underwater because they find these special frequencies. And I thought, if sound can do that in water, why can't data do that in networks? You applied marine biology to computer science. Is that weird? It's brilliant, Dr. Vasquez said. Cross-disciplinary thinking is the holy grail of innovation. Most people get trapped in their own fields. I don't really have a field, Marcus pointed out. I just like learning stuff. Janice stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city. Marcus, what you have is special. But I need you to understand something. The corporate world, it's not always kind to people who think differently. Derek won't be the last person to doubt you because of your age or background. I know, Marcus said quietly. I get it at school too. Some teachers think I'm cheating when I solve things too fast. Other kids think I'm showing off. How do you handle it? Dad taught me that the work speaks for itself. If the answer is right, it's right. Doesn't matter what people think about who wrote it. Robert spoke up. I've tried to prepare him for the world as it is, while hoping for the world as it should be. Well, Janice turned back to them, maybe we can make the world a little more like it should be. Starting here at Technova. She pulled out a tablet and showed them a document. This is the contract for your consulting fee, Marcus. It's substantial. We'll put it in trust for your education, but some will be available for immediate needs. Robert's eyes widened at the number. That's more than I make in 5 years. Your son saved us $100 million contract. This is a bargain, honestly. There must be a catch, Robert said warily. No catch. Just hope. Hope that Marcus will continue to work with us. Hope that his story will inspire us to look for talent in unexpected places. And hope that one day, stories like his won't be surprising at all. Marcus looked at the contract, then at his father, then back at Janice. Can I add something? What's that? I want part of the Williams initiative to include paying for babysitters. So other kids don't have to sneak into office buildings to discover they're good at math. Janice laughed, a genuine sound that filled the office. Done. Anything else? Yeah. Can we make sure the library gets better computers? Some of them are really old and slow. We'll donate a whole computer lab, Janice promised. What else? Marcus thought carefully. I want to meet the team that worked on the original problem. Not to show off, but to learn from them. They know things I don't. That's very mature of you. Also, Marcus added with a shy smile, it would be cool to have someone to talk to about math. My dad tries, but I barely passed algebra, Robert finished with a chuckle. As they prepared to leave, Janice had one more question. Marcus, when you're working on a problem, what motivates you? What keeps you going when it gets hard? Marcus considered this seriously. I think about all the kids like me who are told they can't do things. Every problem I solve is like proving them wrong. And maybe someday, another kid will see what I did and think, if he can do it, so can I. Janice felt an unexpected tightness in her throat. In all her years of corporate leadership, she'd rarely encountered such pure purpose. I think, she said softly, that's already starting to happen. As the Williams family left her office, Janice remained at the window, watching the city below. Somewhere out there were more Marcus Williamses, their brilliance hidden by circumstance and prejudice. But things were going to change. Technova was going to make sure of it. 3 days later, Technova's main auditorium was packed beyond capacity. Every employee who could fit had crammed inside, with others watching on screens throughout the building. Word had spread like wildfire about the janitor's son who'd saved the Matsumoto contract, and everyone wanted to witness what came next. Marcus sat in the front row beside his father, wearing his best clothes, a button-down shirt and khakis that were clean but clearly well worn. Around them, employees in $1,000 suits pretended not to stare. Janice Thompson took the stage, commanding immediate attention. Good afternoon, everyone. By now, you've heard rumors about what happened this week. I'm here to tell you the truth, and more importantly, to announce how Technova is changing because of it. She clicked a remote, and Marcus's solution appeared on the massive screen behind her. This algorithm will revolutionize our data processing capabilities. Initial tests show a 340% improvement in efficiency. The Matsumoto contract is not only saved but expanded, they want us to implement this across their entire network. Applause rippled through the audience. Janice raised a hand for silence. But that's not the real story. The real story is who created this solution and what it says about us as a company. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Marcus Williams, would you please join me on stage? Marcus felt his legs shake as he climbed the steps. The auditorium seemed enormous from up here, hundreds of faces watching him. Janice put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. This 12-year-old young man saw what our best minds missed. Not because he had better training or fancier degrees, but because he looked at the problem differently. Because brilliance doesn't care about zip codes or job titles or the color of someone's skin. She turned to face the audience directly. Yesterday, I had to fire one of our executives. Derek Morrison believed that talent looks a certain way, comes from certain places, follows certain paths. He was wrong, and his prejudice nearly cost us everything. The auditorium was dead silent now. Effective immediately, several changes are being implemented. First, Marcus Williams is now Technova's youngest consultant. He'll work with our R&D team on selected projects while continuing his education. She clicked to the next slide. Second, his father, Robert Williams, is promoted to facilities manager, day shift, with a compensation package that reflects his 8 years of dedicated service and the fact that he's raised a genius while working 2 jobs. Robert's face flushed as applause erupted. Several janitors in the back cheered loudly. Third, Janice continued, we're launching the Williams Initiative. This program will partner with local schools to identify talented students who might be overlooked by traditional metrics. We'll provide mentorship, resources, and opportunities. Because if we almost missed Marcus, how many others are we missing? Dr. Vasquez joined them on stage. I'll be heading the technical side of the initiative. We're also restructuring how we approach problems. Marcus taught us that sometimes the best solution comes from seeing connections others miss, between music and mathematics, between whale songs and data streams. Furthermore, Janice added, we're implementing blind evaluation for all new ideas. Suggestions will be judged solely on merit, not on who submitted them. The janitor's insight will be valued as highly as the CEO's. An hand raised in the audience. What about those of us who sided with Derek? Who didn't speak up? Janice's expression hardened slightly. That's a fair question. We all have biases, conscious or unconscious. The question is what we do when confronted with them. This is a chance to do better. To be better. She turned to Marcus. Would you like to say anything? Marcus stepped to the microphone, which had to be lowered significantly for him. Hi. His voice cracked slightly, and nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. I'm not good at speeches. I'm better with numbers. He took a breath, finding his courage. But I want to say that everyone has something special. Maybe it's not math. Maybe it's art or music or knowing exactly how to make someone smile on a bad day. My dad always told me that everyone deserves respect, from the CEO to the person who cleans the CEO's office. He glanced at his father, drawing strength from his proud smile. I got lucky. I was in the right place at the right time, and someone gave me a chance. But it shouldn't take luck. Every kid who loves learning should have access to books and computers and people who believe in them. His voice grew stronger. So yeah, I solved your algorithm. But the bigger problem, the one about seeing people's potential no matter where they come from, that's something we all need to solve together. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous ovation. People rose to their feet, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Marcus saw tears on some faces, determination on others. Janice retook the microphone. One last announcement. Derek Morrison threatened to sue for wrongful termination. In response, we're releasing the full video of his confrontation with Marcus, with the Williams family's permission. Let the world see what prejudice looks like and how much it costs. She looked directly at several executives in the front row. Let it be a reminder that at Teknova, we judge people by their contributions, not their circumstances. And if anyone has a problem with that, my office door is open. So is the exit. As the assembly concluded, employees surrounded Marcus and Robert, offering congratulations and apologies in equal measure. Marcus noticed several janitors speaking with executives for perhaps the first time, barriers breaking down in real time. "You did good, son," Robert whispered. "We did good, Dad," Marcus corrected. "You taught me to work hard and stay humble. That's what really solved the problem." Dr. Vasquez appeared at their side. "Marcus, I've scheduled your first official team meeting for Saturday. Are you ready to change the world?" Marcus grinned, the 12-year-old boy showing through the genius. "Can we start with something smaller? Like maybe changing how people think?" "I think," Janice said, joining them, "you've already started that process. The rest is just mathematics." As they left the auditorium, Marcus noticed something different about the building. The invisible walls between departments, between executives and service staff, seemed a little less solid. People were talking who'd never spoken before. Ideas were being shared across previously rigid hierarchies. It was just a beginning, but beginnings, Marcus knew, were where all the best solutions started. 6 months later, Marcus stood in Teknova's new innovation lab, surrounded by whiteboards covered in his distinctive handwriting. The morning sun streamed through windows that his father had cleaned just an hour ago. Robert insisted on personally maintaining the spaces where his son worked. "And if we adjust the frequency here," Marcus explained to a group of engineers, "the data packets actually accelerate through the network instead of just maintaining speed." Dr. Vasquez watched from the doorway, still amazed at how naturally Marcus taught concepts that had taken her years to grasp. The boy had grown 2 inches and his voice was starting to change, but his gift for seeing patterns had only sharpened. "Marcus," she called. "The press conference is in 20 minutes. He nodded, finishing his explanation before grabbing the blazer Teknova had bought him. It was still a little big, but he'd grow into it. Just like he was growing into his role as the company's most unusual consultant. In the conference room, reporters were already assembled. The Marcus Williams story had captivated the tech world, sparking conversations about talent, prejudice, and potential that reached far beyond Teknova's walls. Janice Thompson stood at the podium, Marcus beside her, with Robert watching proudly from the side. The transformation in the room was evident. The janitorial staff had front-row seats alongside the executives. "Ladies and gentlemen," Janice began, 6 months ago, Teknova nearly lost a $100 million contract. Today, thanks to the Williams algorithm, we're announcing a breakthrough that will reshape how data moves through networks globally. She clicked a remote, revealing charts that made several reporters gasp. Speed increases of 400%. Energy usage down by 60%. And all because a 12-year-old boy saw what we couldn't. "Ms. Thompson," a reporter called out, "what about critics who say this is just a publicity stunt?" Marcus stepped forward, having learned to handle such questions. "The math doesn't care about publicity. Either it works or it doesn't. And it works." "But surely someone helped you." "Yes," Marcus interrupted calmly. "My dad helped by believing in me. Ms. Patterson, my teacher, helped by lending me books. The library helped by having free internet. But the solution? That came from seeing patterns everyone else missed because they were looking too hard in the same direction." Another reporter, "What's next for the Williams Initiative?" Janice smiled. "We've partnered with 15 schools so far. We've identified 47 students with exceptional abilities in various fields. Not just mathematics, music, engineering, literature, even culinary arts. Talent is everywhere if you look for it. And," Robert added, stepping forward nervously, "we're funding after-school programs in underserved communities. No parent should have to bring their child to work because they can't afford childcare. Marcus, someone called, do you feel like you've missed out on a normal childhood? Marcus considered this. Define normal. I get to solve puzzles that help millions of people. I have friends now who actually understand when I talk about math. And I still play video games, I just also design algorithms to beat them more efficiently. Laughter rippled through the room. What about those who say a 13-year-old shouldn't be working in corporate America? I work 10 hours a week, Marcus clarified. The rest of the time, I'm in school, doing homework, or hanging out with friends. Technova makes sure I'm a kid first, consultant second. Dr. Vasquez stepped up. Marcus has also inspired our adult engineers to think differently. His approach to problem solving has led to innovations in 3 other major projects. He doesn't just solve problems, he teaches us how to see them differently. Can you give us a preview of the new breakthrough? A tech journalist asked eagerly. Marcus and Janice exchanged glances. Show them, she said. Marcus pulled out a marker and approached a whiteboard. Remember how the first solution was about harmony? This one's about resonance. Imagine if data could actually gain energy as it travels, like a snowball rolling downhill. He began drawing, and the room fell silent, watching a teenager explain concepts that would revolutionize global communications. Several reporters stopped taking notes, simply mesmerized by the elegant simplicity of his approach. The applications are endless, Janice concluded. Faster internet for remote communities. More efficient satellite communications. Even potential breakthroughs in quantum computing. And it all started because we learned to look for genius in unexpected places. As the press conference wound down, a young black girl in the audience raised her hand. She couldn't have been more than 10, clearly brought by one of the reporters. Mr. Marcus. I like math too, but kids at school say I'm weird. What should I do? Marcus's face softened. He left the podium and walked directly to her, kneeling to her eye level. What's your name? Jasmine. Jasmine, being weird is just another word for being special. Every great mathematician, scientist, artist, they were all weird to someone. You keep loving math, okay? And maybe someday, you'll solve a problem that helps everyone. He glanced at Janice, who nodded. In fact, how would you like to visit our lab? See what math can do in the real world. Jasmine's eyes widened. Really? Really? Being good at math isn't weird. It's wonderful. As the crowd dispersed, Robert put his arm around his son. Your mom would be so proud. She always said to use my gifts to help others, Marcus replied. I'm trying, Dad. You're succeeding, son. Later, as they walked through Technova's halls, Marcus noticed all the small changes. Janitors chatting with engineers. A suggestion box in the break room overflowing with ideas from every level of employee. Pictures on the wall showcasing not just executives but every person who contributed to the company's success. Mr. Williams. A young janitor called out to Robert. My daughter got into the initiative program. They say she has a gift for coding. That's wonderful, Carlos, Robert beamed. Tell Maria we're proud of her. As they reached the innovation lab, Dr. Vasquez was waiting with a tablet. Marcus, the Tokyo team just sent their results. Your algorithm performed even better than projected. Cool, Marcus said, then paused. But you know what's cooler? Carlos's daughter learning to code. That's what really matters. Janice appeared beside them. Spoken like a true innovator. Technology is just tools. People are what make the difference. She handed Marcus an envelope. Speaking of which, this came for you. Marcus opened it, his eyes widening. It's from the International Mathematics Olympiad. They want me to represent the United States. Will Technova give you time off? Robert asked. Janice laughed. Are you kidding? We'll sponsor the whole team. Genius should be celebrated, wherever it comes from. As the sun set over the city, Marcus stood at the window, his reflection overlapping with the skyline. 6 months ago, he'd been invisible, just another poor kid with big dreams. Now, he was proof that talent could come from anywhere. But more importantly, he wasn't unique. Across the city, other kids were discovering their gifts, supported by programs that saw their potential rather than their circumstances. The Williams Initiative was creating a ripple effect, changing how companies thought about talent and opportunity. "What are you thinking about?" his father asked. "The future," Marcus replied. "And how many problems we're going to solve together." Robert squeezed his shoulder. "Together. I like the sound of that." As they headed home, to their new apartment, closer to both Technova and Marcus's school, the city lights twinkled with possibility. Each light represented a life, a potential, a gift waiting to be discovered. And at Technova Industries, they were finally learning to see them all. Dear friend, every child deserves the chance to discover their brilliance, regardless of their background or circumstances. Talent doesn't choose based on race, wealth, or zip code. It's everywhere, waiting to be nurtured and celebrated. The next time you pass by someone society overlooks, a janitor, a service worker, a struggling student, remember that genius can bloom in the most unexpected places. All it takes is someone willing to see beyond stereotypes and offer an opportunity. If this story inspired you to look at the world a little differently, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their dreams are valid, their talents are real, and their potential is limitless. Together, we can build a world where every Marcus Williams gets their chance to shine.